Hey, everybody, this is Pierre Quinn, and welcome to Reflecting Forward. I know. It's been a while since we have been in these live stream streets, but we are back. Some of you remember not too long ago, or maybe a little while ago, we had a show called Sunday Night Live that we did live on LinkedIn and live on YouTube. And it was really a place for leaders to connect. Sunday Night Live took a hiatus, and we came back with Reflecting Forward. And this is episode 1. We are so excited. We're so glad that you're joining us on LinkedIn. We're so glad that you're joining us on YouTube. You're even watching the replay of this. You've probably shared this with a colleague, with a family member, with a friend, because this is a space for us as leaders to look back at our past to find clarity so that we can move forward with certainty. Yep. Reflecting Forward is the space where we as leaders, we hang out twice a month and we look at our past to find clarity so that we can move forward with certainty. And it's an honor to be your host for this video podcast for this program. For the past 15 years, I've been working with leaders just like you, from keynotes, workshops, executive coaching, leading retreats. And one of the really cool things about my work is I have the opportunity to hold space for leaders to reflect. And if you're like any other busy leader that I've worked with over the years, you recognize the challenge of having the time to sit, to think, to process, to walk through those experiences. And the truth is that's exactly where we find our learning. That's where we find our greatest insights. And it's so important for us to do that together. So I'm excited to bring you Reflecting Forward. And I'm excited to walk you through a series of leadership conversations. Now, here on episode 1, I want to set some ground rules for our time together. There's going to be a Q&A section at the end, near the end of the teaching portion of what we walk through. Q&A section. I'd love for you to drop some questions into the comment section on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and our team is ready to grab those questions and frame them up for us at the end of our time together. But also, as we're going through, as you encounter a piece of the learning today that really captures you, that really grabs you, feel free to throw some comments in or even some questions. Maybe you want to push back a little bit on a framework. You want to push back a little bit on a quote or something that I shared. Feel free to push back in the comments as well as we co-create this space together. Because we know as leaders, it's not really the experience in which we find the learning. It's the reflection. It's the reflection on that experience. I'm so excited to walk you through a series of reflection. In fact, for our first series, we got something really, really special planned for us as we walk through leadership foundations. Okay, Leadership Foundations, episode 1 of Reflecting Forward. We are walking through self-awareness. It's so big, so crucial, so foundational to what we do as leaders, this idea of self-awareness. So let me frame out a couple of things for you. Let me give you some framing on what I mean by leadership. In fact, I want to give you some perspective from Peter Northouse, one of the grandfathers of leadership research. Peter Northouse says that leadership is the process by which an individual influences other individuals to achieve a common goal. Leadership is the process. It's the process by which an individual influences other individuals to achieve a common goal. And I really like what Northouse frames up for us. Here's the way I put it. Here's a variation on how I framed it in my book, Leading While Green, that leadership is guiding others to walk in the direction toward who they have the potential of becoming. That's me. That's my definition. That's in the book Leading While Green that I wrote several years ago. It's part of what I use to teach leaders on the road. I have this framing definition of leadership. Leadership, my opinion here, and if you differ, that's perfectly okay. But leadership is guiding others to walk in the direction toward, this is very important, toward who they have the potential of becoming. That's so crucial. That foundational to leadership, core to leadership, is developing, guiding, mentoring, coaching, helping the people who are around you experience that much needed transformation. Okay, so here's the question: is how does it work? How do we guide? How do we shape the process? How do we influence it, according to North House, a group of people to achieve a common goal? How do we nudge people in the direction of who they have the potential of becoming? And there's some aspects of leadership that are so important, that are so crucial here. I haven't forgotten that on episode 1 of Leadership Foundations, our key thought is self-awareness. And I'll show you how we'll get there inside of our 5 aspects of leadership that are so crucial. So number 1, every leader needs the ability to craft vision and think through strategy. You got to have a big picture of what the future of our organization, of our team, of our group looks like. And you have to have a game plan on how we get there. So we need that vision and strategy. We also need to be able to communicate and influence. It's nothing. It means absolutely nothing to have a big picture and to have a strategy if you can't articulate that vision, if you can't make it come alive to the people around you, if you can't walk them clearly through the next steps to achieving the goal, and then motivate and inspire them to want to go in that direction with you. So we got vision and strategy. We got communication and influence. Number 3, decision-making and problem solving. And for some of us, we didn't know. We didn't know when we accepted a particular role, or growing up when someone told us, you're going to be an amazing leader. You're going to be a fantastic leader one day. They didn't really tell us about the hard decision-making and the problem solving. And that's so critical to leadership impact. And in times you're making decisions that people don't like, don't necessarily agree with. You have to take the larger picture in view, and it's going to take some resilience and some fortitude to be able to make those decisions and solve problems. Number 4, empowerment and delegation. One of the worst things that you can do is to give people responsibility without authority. One of the worst things that you could do as a leader is give people responsibility without authority. So as a leader, you got to be able to empower, got to be able to delegate. There are some things that are on your plate. You cannot take them off your plate. You are the best person to do them. You are the best person to execute them. However, there are some things on your plate that you may really like doing, but somebody else can do it better, and they probably should do it better than you. And you should give them the authority to make the decisions in that regard. Here's the final one. And this is where self-awareness lands. Remember, we're talking about vision and strategy. We're talking about communication and influence. We're talking about decision-making and problem solving. We're talking about empowerment and delegation. This piece of relationship building and emotional intelligence is where self-awareness squarely sits. And I know, and you know, of so many leaders who have lost teams, who have lost projects, who have lost credibility because of their inability to manage themselves emotionally. That inability to manage themselves emotionally. And self-awareness sits squarely in that. In fact, Tim Clark, who wrote the book on psychological safety a couple of years ago, I know psychological safety is buzzing like crazy now. Dr. Timothy Clark wrote this book several years ago on 4 aspects of psychological safety. And he pulls on this deep layer of emotional intelligence and where self-awareness sits. And he talks about 3 things. The first thing is self-regard. And this one's tough. This one's tough because we realize you've been there before. You've been around leaders who did not have the internal confidence necessary to lead at a high level. So here's the thing about self-regard. Self-regard is all about what you believe about yourself. It's all about value. And we frame value in 2 primary ways. We frame value intrinsically, and we frame value from an instrumental perspective. And the instrumental perspective on leadership is simply, I consider a person valuable based on the benefit that I get from being around them. They make me better. They make my team better. They allow me to accomplish this task. They give me clarity in this particular direction, or they help me with these unique challenges. We look for the instrumental value of a person. And this is really tough because as we look at all of our education process, we were determined to be valuable based on our output. Your grades said you were valuable. National Honor Society said you were valuable. Being a part of the football team and winning championships in high school said you were valuable. Your merit scores, your debate team, output, the instrumental value. What can you create? What can you accomplish? What can you do? And when you did those things and when you checked off those boxes, we said, okay, yeah, this person has value. The challenge to that is that we go through life with this idea that in order for me to be valuable, or the only way that I retain value is instrumental value. And sometimes we force our jobs, we force our volunteer positions, we force the things that we put our hands on, we force those things to try to create value for us. When the truth is, the best leaders, the most transformative leaders recognize intrinsic value. This is deeply connected to what Dr. Timothy Clark writes in Psychological Safety, this idea of inclusion safety, that I belong just because I'm here, just because I'm another human being. I signed on the dotted line to be a part of this organization, and I belong simply because I have committed and chosen to be here. This intrinsic value, I'm worth being around simply because I'm another human being. And that's critical. You have to be willing to believe that about yourself. And for some of us as leaders, it takes a bit of therapy or executive coaching or some other training to get us in the proper mindset, an increased level of mindfulness, so that we believe that we're valuable long before output, long before closing a big sale, long before bringing in a huge client, long before navigating a complicated process or providing guidance on a huge project. Long before that, intrinsically, you retain, you hold, you bring value. Once we can key into that core belief that I'm valuable, then we can lock into self-awareness. Because self-regard is what you believe. Self-awareness is what do you know? And it really requires you to take inventory of yourself and how you're interacting with the world around you. So once I nudge or challenge my belief system, and once I take stock or inventory of what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, how I'm navigating the world, then the third piece is I'm better able to manage myself. Here's the kicker. You've been there before, right? You've been there where you've been around a leader that could not control, that they were characterized by emotional outbursts. Now, the element that makes this increasingly complicated is success. Accomplishment makes this increasingly complicated. And I've seen this with some of the clients that I've worked with. When you look at the output and you say, well, we're doing the job. We're closing the sale. We're servicing the clients. We're building the widgets or boxes or whatever we're building. We look at the outcome. We look at the output. And sometimes we say the ends, the output justifies the means. So why do I have to worry about the interaction of the people on my team? Why do I have to worry about organizational culture? Why do I have to worry about vision and clarity and making sure everyone is aligned around strategy? Why? If we're getting output, if we're getting outcomes, if we're checking off boxes, if we're making the things that we're supposed to make. And the truth is, even though you're experiencing an output, even though you're experiencing an outcome, you will never truly experience the full capacity. Remember, walking in the direction toward who they have the potential to become. You'll never experience the full capacity. You'll never unlock the full capacity of your team, of your organization, of your people, of those you're aligned with, if you are not self-aware and you don't model and teach your people how to manage themselves, especially in frustrating times, especially in uncomfortable times. I love how James Clear puts it. James Clear says, lack of self-awareness is poison. James Clear, lack of self-awareness is poison, but reflection and review are the antidote. Lack of self-awareness is poison, but reflection and review are the antidote. And in order for us to really be self-aware as leaders, foundational principle of leadership, we really have to leverage a high amount of reflection and review. Here's simply what self-awareness is. It's an understanding of your emotions, of your drivers, of your strengths, of your weaknesses, your growth areas. It's being willing to have conversations relative to your blind spots. It's a curiosity relative to how you show up and your impact in the world. The curiosity about that is so important. And so many people say, and I've heard leaders say, I'm not an emotional person and I don't get into all those emotional things. Emotions are not a big thing for me. And we're really nuanced when we look at life that way. All of us are impacted emotionally. And in our roles, in our work and our responsibility, we don't separate, we don't pull those emotions out. Sometimes you mask them. Sometimes you hide them. Sometimes you don't say how you truly feel. And sometimes the difficulty is we don't even know the words to say. We don't know the words to say to describe how we feel. If you look at standardized test scores, if you look at ACT, SAT, at least here in the United States where I am, and as we're recording this live, as you look at standardized test scores and test prep courses, many test prep courses for ACT and SAT, many of them include a healthy dose of vocabulary words. And let me tell you why this is important. Because when they throw those questions at you on the ACT or the SAT, it is recorded. The research shows those students with a higher vocabulary, with a more expansive vocabulary, have a greater opportunity to figure out the questions, to navigate the questions, even if they don't completely know what the question is trying to get at, because they have more to pull from in their wider vocabulary. It puts them in a better position to do well on not just the question, but on the test overall, because they're pulling from more resources. It's the same when we're on this journey of emotional intelligence that includes foundationally self-awareness. It's self-awareness. Am I aware of myself and my surroundings and my reaction? It is self-management. What's the right thing to do in response to how I feel? It's social awareness. Can I be attuned to how my team is feeling? And then there's relationship management. How do I navigate the ups and downs of our organization life cycle and the ups and downs of people's emotional responses? But the key foundational to that is self-awareness. And sometimes the challenge is we just don't have the words. We just don't have the words. So when you have time, Google emotional vocabulary words, Google emotional vocabulary wheel, and pay attention to the words that that are displayed on those images or Google searches or whatever search engine of choice that you choose. A while ago in popular culture, there was this phrase that people would say, and the phrase was some type of way. That was the response to something difficult, to something frustrating, to something overwhelming, to something confusing. People would say, I feel some type of way about this. When a person articulates, when they use that particular phrase, what they are indicating is I'm receptive to feeling something, but I just don't have the words to describe how I feel. So one of the exercises that we do in some of our workshops, as we talk about self-awareness, we give people these emotional vocabulary words, and we ask them, pick 2 or 3 words to describe your past week. You cannot use fine. You cannot use good. You cannot use okay. because these are words we commonly use. How did you feel? How'd you feel last week? Or how was last week for you? Or how was yesterday for you? Or how was this morning for you? Oh, it was fine. Oh, it was good. Oh, it was okay. But that's not giving yourself or giving the people around you really enough data to indicate how you're actually feeling and what you're actually navigating. And I know some of us, we want to keep those feelings close to us. We don't want people to know for whatever reason. The challenge, though, is as a leader who is supposed to model behaviors for your team and supposed to help the team around you navigate their emotional responses as well. It's very difficult if we're not leveraging the words that we need to make those decisions and to firm up those relationships. So again, James Clear, lack of self-awareness is poison, but reflection and review is the antidote. So I'm gonna give you 6 parts. I'm gonna give you my 6 parts really quickly. My 6 parts for reflection. My 6 parts to really leverage your self-awareness. My 6-part framework. You can do this at the end of a day. You can do this at the end of a week. You can do this on the other side of any experience, good or bad, that you navigate. My 6-part framework for reflection. Part number 1, describe the experience. So tell me what happened. Describe the experience. By the way, I use this 6-part framework with my executive coaching clients as well. So 1, describe the experience. What happened? This is so key. What happened? Was there an argument? Did someone get fired? Did someone get hired? Did you land the big client? Did the client reject you? Was the shipment didn't arrive on time? Bring in all the information that you need to describe what actually happened. So that's part 1 of this 6-part framework. Part 2, how did you feel? Emotional vocabulary words, we're coming right back to it. So how did you feel about what happened? This is so important. Let me tell you why this part is important, because how you feel determines how you work. Research from Harvard Business Review underscores this. How you feel determines how you work. Some of us have heard of, maybe you've heard of the Sunday night scaries. In some places they call it the Sunday night scaries. And the Sunday night scaries are this wave of emotion that comes over you on Sunday night as you think about going to work Monday morning. The frustration, the irritation, if you're working in a job that you don't like, of course, the frustration, the irritation, all the irritating coworker, all the parts where you say, I don't want anything to do with this. And you're really apprehensive to go to work on Monday morning. It's not just the experience that's important, and writing down, not just keeping it in your head, but writing down the experience it's also, because we're tapping into self-awareness. It's asking, how did I feel when this thing happened? How did I feel when this thing happened? So the experience, how you felt about it, part 3 of this 6-part framework for review and reflection that helps us really unlock our self-awareness. Part 3 is, okay, evaluate. We have the experience, we have the emotion. Let's evaluate it, good or bad. What parts of what you experience do you put as good things? What parts do you put as bad things? What parts maybe sit in neutral? And what were your expectations? What did you want to happen? What did you contribute to what was going on? And what would you do differently next time? So we look at our experience, we tap into our emotion, we evaluate, good or bad, or in the middle. We review our expectations and our contribution. And then part 4 of this framework, part 4 is educate. So what did you learn? This is the part that many of us skip over or don't even connect with altogether. Yes, the thing didn't go the way that you wanted it to. Or yes, your boss unloaded a new project on you as you're in the middle of a deadline. And yes, you felt overwhelmed and frustrated and a little bit annoyed. And yes, for you, it goes into the category of bad because you didn't expect this. And in fact, you would expect your boss to have a bit more awareness of your workload and to maybe pass on the project to someone else. Okay, so what did you learn about this experience, or what did you learn from this experience? What did you learn about how you respond when you're under pressure? How you respond when you're frustrated or you're annoyed or you're irritated? What did you learn about how you respond when maybe the person you report to doesn't, in your opinion, make the best decision? So what did you learn? What did you learn about your resilience? What did you learn about how you communicate this difficulty or this frustration to the rest of the team? There's so much learning that happens in this area. And walking through the education section of this reflection framework, what did you learn? Because the next one is the idea of elevate. We want to take what we learned and then ask, how can we use this in the future? Not just the experience, not just the emotion, not just our evaluation, not just educating ourselves, asking what we learned. It's now the elevation of what can I take? How can I take what I've learned in this particular experience and apply it in the future? That's where the transformation happens. That's where the transition begins to occur. It's when we start to think. That's the moving forward with certainty, the looking back with clarity, the reflecting, the experience, the emotion, the evaluation. Education and elevate says, okay, as I move forward with a sense of clarity, here's how I can use this in the future. Because in many of our roles, a similar scenario is going to happen in the future. And even if the scenario isn't similar, there will be a time when you're frustrated again, you're annoyed again, you're overwhelmed again. Or there will be a time where you are excited, where you are overjoyed, where things are going well, and you're feeling really good about your team and your project and the organization. That will happen in the future. The key for us as leaders, as we're cluing into our self-awareness is, okay, so how can I use this in the future? What are the ways in which I can leverage this for the future? And then it's the execute. So what's the action plan? What's the next step? What's the next right action? It's for so many of us, we sit in sessions like this, or we listen to our favorite podcast, we read a book, we go to a seminar, or we sit down for a webinar or some other training, and we walk out of that with a huge notepad of thoughts, of ideas, of suggestions, of things to do. And then we let it sit. We let it sit because we don't ask, how can I use this in the future? And what's the next right action? We know a lot of what we experience in training and development and coaching sessions. For a lot of us, it's review. We know that already. We dealt with it in our MBA program or our PhD program, or we dealt with it in our first job right out of college. We know. We know, but we don't take action. I'm an 80s kid. One of my favorite cartoons from the 80s was G.I. Joe. And G.I. Joe would end every single episode the same way. They would say, knowing is half the battle. And it was affirmative. Now you know. It was this life learning lesson that somebody would walk through, and then the person would say, usually a teenager would say, now I know. And the one of the characters from G.I. Joe would say, and learning is half the battle. And it would be really supportive, really affirmative, really uplifting. Knowing is half the battle. And then the G.I. Joe theme song would come on. Well, for a lot of us, we have been hanging out with half the battle for the longest time. Because knowing is half the battle, but execution is actually how you win the battle. Knowing for us as leaders, grabbing the resource, having the mentor, understanding the framework, walking through the scenarios, reviewing the case studies, grabbing the knowledge, knowing is half the battle, but execution is how you win the battle. So here's the last piece I want to leave with you in this segment, episode 1, Foundations of Leadership, Self-Awareness. Here's the last piece I want to leave with you. It's really, really important. If you want to be the transformative leader, if you believe that you're supposed to be, or that you're in training or mentoring to actually become, many of us are, maybe your mid-career or your senior career, you're looking to bump up to that C-suite, and we want to check off that box of transformational leader. Transformational leader. We want to be the example that people give when we ask, who was a leader that really made a difference for you? Who was the leader that helped to grow you and shape you and put you in a position to really make a difference and really have significant impact? And many of us want our names to be mentioned in those rooms, in those conversations. We want to check off that transformational leader bucket. Well, there's no way that you can check off the transformational leader bucket that really is steeped in a relationship management piece. We can't really get there until we've unlocked social awareness, being open, being responsive, being understanding of the emotional states of our team, and even the life cycle of the organization, how our team feels in January when we're kicking off the year versus how we feel in November when we're crunching toward a deadline. And how do I motivate and coach and support my team through the ups and downs of our year? I need that social awareness. But I can't really unlock social awareness unless I have a deeper understanding of self-management. Teaching myself, guiding myself, coaching myself to have the appropriate responses. And we know as leaders, there's going to be a moment or two where you're at the end, where you're at the edge, where you're completely fed up, or there's going to be a moment or two where you're so excited about what's going on that if you're not careful, you will lose. You'll lose some credibility in the moment, or you'll lose grasp of what's the most important. And the ability to choose the right action in response to your emotion is key. That's self-management. But we can't really unlock self-management if we don't unlock that self-awareness. And the key to self-awareness is being open, it's being honest, it's being curious about what I'm thinking, about how I'm feeling, and about what I'm ready to do. Hey, that's been the self-awareness portion of this episode 1 of Reflecting Forward, Foundations of Leadership. And I want to challenge you. If you're watching episode 1 live, if you're watching the replay of this, I want to challenge you to take a few moments and walk through our self-awareness, our reflection framework. And at the very, very least, even if you don't feel inclined to walk through the entire framework, at the very least, ask yourself, how did I feel last week? And you cannot use the words good, fine, or okay. Ask yourself, how did you feel last week? And what would you do differently so that you can feel better next week? Okay, so we finished episode one of Reflecting Forward, Self-Awareness, Foundations of Leadership. Thanks for hanging out with us, either hanging out with us live, watching the replay of this. So typically this is the section where we do Q&A. Love to see what questions that you have in the chat. What are some of the questions that showed up? I'm scrolling back, and I see one of the questions that came from 406 Strategic Communications. We see that in the list for us. Is it enough? This is a very good question. Is it enough for employees to use a word on the emotion wheel if they are new to describing their emotions, or do they need to expand on it and what those words mean to them? Very, very good question from 406 Strategic Communications. Is it enough for employees to use a word on the emotion wheel if they are new to describing their words, or do they need to expand on it and what those words mean to them? So typically, thanks for asking this question. Typically, here's how I frame the exercise. I don't just ask people to pick a word. I ask people, okay, pick a word, and then what's the 30 to 60-second story behind that word? And when I'm listening to the 30 or 60-second story behind the word, I'm getting clued into their context. I'm getting some clarity around their values. This exercise, and it can be difficult if you're not in the common practice of describing your emotions. But when you give the framing, give me the word and the story, at least when the executives and the leaders that I've worked with doing this particular exercise, it gives them a bit more comfort in walking through. And then as a facilitator, or if you're just guiding your team, you can ask, so what does this word specifically mean to you? Or you can say, so what I'm hearing is when you say the word frustrated, you mean X, Y, and Z, and speak in almost definitive tones. And if they agree, they'll say, yes, exactly. If they don't, they'll push back and say, no, here's what I mean by this. It's a challenging practice if you're not used to it. As you begin to incorporate it into, and this is not, let's take 30 minutes and sing Kumbaya and hold hands and everybody talk about our emotions. That's not what this particular practice is. It's almost a quick hit, a quick check-in. Hey, and it provides even extra data for the team as well. So quick hit, quick check-in. Hey, Pierre, how you feeling this week? And what's the story behind how you're feeling? And then the subsequent question of, okay, so what can we do as a team to support you as you are navigating this particular feeling and this particular story? So again, thank you, 406 Strategic Communications, for that particular question. All right, so a couple things I want us to be mindful of as we're coming down to the end of this first episode. And of course, if you got other questions, drop those into the chat. Or even after you're watching the replay of this and you got a question, drop it into the comment section, either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and our team will grab those questions as well. We want to start actually live streaming this show, Reflecting Forward, on the Cardell Group website. And I neglected to share that at the beginning of our conversation. So not only do I speak and serve as an executive coach and facilitate leadership development sessions, I'm also the founder of a leadership development firm. The title is the Cardell Group. Started it in 2017. The focus of the Cardell Group is really to equip leaders to better lead themselves, better lead their teams, and ultimately better lead the business or the organizations that they serve. And we got a spot on LinkedIn. We have a website, thecardellgroup.com. We want to stream on LinkedIn from the Cardell Group website, but LinkedIn told us we need a couple more likes. So even if you're watching this on YouTube, hop over to LinkedIn and like the Cardell Group, so that we can add a third channel to our streaming series here. We're on LinkedIn on my personal page. We're on YouTube on my personal page, Pierre Quinn. Thank you all for joining us. We want to add the firm's social media to what we're doing as well. So be sure to hang out with us, thecardellgroup.com, and also the Cardell Group on LinkedIn. All right. Second and fourth Sundays of every month, we'll be back here for Reflecting Forward. This is the space. This is the space where we clarify the past to guide future success. This is the space as leaders where we look back for clarity so that we can move forward with certainty. And I look forward to joining you every second and fourth Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Reflecting Forward. We're in the middle of a series, Leadership Foundations. And on our next episode, we're going to talk about behavioral styles, tendencies, a little bit about personality, and how those impact the shadow of your leadership. Again, my name is Pierre Quinn. It's an honor serving as your host. And before I let you go, I want to take this question from B Bay. In the fast-paced world of corporate development and growth, how do leaders begin to shift their culture to slow down? Oh, this is big. How do leaders begin to shift their culture to slow down and emphasize the value of this type of emotional intelligence? Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing for us as leaders. There's a lot that we have. There's a fair amount. I don't necessarily want to say a lot, but there's a fair amount that we can shape, that we can frame in our organization. There's a fair amount that we can frame in our organization. And this falls into the modeling context as well. In many of our organizations, we are speed to solution. We're moving speed to solution. However, the research is shifting when we talk about organizational wellness and organizational culture, that more time is necessary to stop and pause and think. You might not be able to create that policy, right? At the policy level, you might not be able to totally shift your organization. However, in the modeling piece, in the check-ins that you have with your team, in the one-on-one check-ins, in the team meetings that you have, you introduce these smaller pieces that allow the team to slow down and reflect. You introduce them small pieces at a time. Again, organizations, systems, they are designed for equilibrium. They are designed to stay at a constant state. So if you say, here's what we need to do, and you share that with the person that you directly report to, or you try to get to VP level or C-suite level, from an org standpoint, the org is gonna, in many cases, gonna push back and say, no. Even if you have a conversation with the director of corporate wellness, no, let's see how this shakes out, or let's see how we can slowly incorporate some of these ideas, even if you're stepping to the table with research. However, with the team that you lead and with the one-on-ones that you have with your team, you can begin to model and encourage the practice of slowing down and leveraging the intentionality around emotional intelligence and emotional awareness. And then track as a leader, what is the impact of it? As we've taken a few moments, not hours, a few moments here and there to check in, a few moments here and there to pause, a few moments here and there to evaluate and educate and elevate and execute, a few moments to think, as we go over the next week or month or quarter, what has been the value, even if it's just anecdotally, what's been the value of slowing down and impacting your team that way? Thanks, B-Bay, for that question. I want to encourage you to incorporate, all of us, some slowdown. And we do it at the end of the year when we do resolutions. We do the slowdown. Some of us do it around birthdays or anniversaries. We do the slowdown. Some of us do it, unfortunately, when we get sick. We do the slowdown. How can we incorporate the slowdown into how we're modeling what we want the people around us to do, and how can we take notes on how that's impacting the organization? Sometimes you got to slow down to go fast, and sometimes you got to look back and slow down so that you can move forward with the clarity that you need. That's all we got for this episode 1 of Reflecting Forward. Again, join me second and fourth Sundays, 7 p.m. Eastern time, here in this space. And I look forward to reflecting again with you soon. Take care.